YouTubers, Electric Adventures here, leading into a video by my mate Jared from Retro Revolutions. A little while ago I sent him a couple of Game Gears that I had spare. I actually had 3, and they're in various states of repair, because I'm interested to know what Jared can make in one of his fantastic mods. So without further ado, let's go see what Jared's done this time.
Alright, so here we have the 2 Sega Game Gears that Tony sent me. So a little bit of history about the Sega Game Gear.
The Sega Game Gear was Sega's attempt to compete in the handheld gaming market. Released in Japan in 1990. In 1991, it was brought over to North America and finally released in Australia in 1992. During its production, the Game Gear went head-to-head against not only the Nintendo juggernaut Game Boy systems, but also the Atari Lynx and NEC's Turbo Express. Because the Game Gear was so technologically similar to the Sega Master System, the Game Gear could play not only its own titles, but with the use of an adapter, it could play Sega Master System games too. But the Sega Game Gear was actually even more powerful than the Sega Master System, featuring a larger color palette of 4096 colors and stereo sound. The Game Gear was certainly a beast of a machine for its time. Upon its release, the Sega Game Gear's lower price and unique game library gave it the edge over the Lynx and Turbo Express. But with great power comes great power drain, and the Game Gear's vampire-like ability to suck the life out of batteries, paired with minimal support from game developers, left the Game Gear eating the proverbial dust of the Nintendo Game Boy, selling only 10.5 million units by 1996, compared to the Nintendo Game Boy selling around 45 million units by 1997, the year the Game Gear was discontinued. The legacy of the Game Gear is a mixed one. While an impressive technological device for its time with its fancy full-color backlit screen and processing power, it's also known for chomping down AA batteries like a hungry hippo at an all-you-can-eat buffet, and what some would argue is its humdrum library.
Okay, so we have to take the batteries out and flip it over to get this unit open so we can start tinkering with the electronics. So you're going to need this, and those are like a Nintendo security set you'll find on eBay. If you've seen my videos before, I've used this. Use the bigger one, and there's one of those security screws up here. And you just take that out. Now the rest of them is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we'll get those out now. Okay, so use your Phillips screwdriver to get the rest of these out. So when you open it up, there will be 2 daughter boards we've just got to disconnect in here. Those are located here and here. So you just connect those 2 harnesses, and that will separate the Game Gear. Then we can begin work. There's one more little one here. I'll take that off as well. And separate your Game Gear. Okay. So let's get into doing this demuck circuit and putting it all in situ so he has his controller. We'll start breaking this down step by step. This one I've actually got here is by Yoshi Knuckles, my friend Ben, who sent it to me. So there's a little bit of a guide, and I'll follow that and I'll show you guys how we do it. Okay, so we're going to have to cut out the slot for the controller port. So we're going to use some cutters here, a file and a drill, and just work your way around there. Use some masking tape. But the key thing that's really important is getting them screw holes lined up. Take your time with this plastic so you don't crack it. But anyway, what we do is get it to a point where we know it'll sit in nice. Then we flip it around, and then we can mark our drill holes, boom boom, through there. And we know they'll line up. So I'll get to screwing this in, and then we'll start soldering. Okay, so So let's tin all these pads, starting with the 5 volt and the ground over here. Heat it up. Nice. Okay, so we're going to want to power this little Demux board. So we're going to have the ground, which I've already done, in a 0.5 like shown here. I'm just going to solder the 5 volt wire onto this pad. The one that's unsoldered is the 5 volt, and the one that has the wire on is the ground. Alright. Okay, next we're going to want to remove this little power distribution from here. So we're going to take this plastic piece off here. There's one screw here and one screw here. I've already taken them off just to show you, and it just lifts out like that. That's where we're going to pull our 5 volt supply from for the little Demux board. Okay, so with the board as shown here, grab your 5 volt wire, and it's going to go to the top 2 pins here. I'll just solder that on. Get it nice and hot. Okay, and the other one you want to do is your ground, which is 1, 2, 3 here on this plane. And we'll just do the same and solder it on here. Feed into it. Alright. Okay, that's them two done. So the 5 volts on top and the ground's on the bottom. So we have a few models of the Game Gear. I'm working on the version 1, and the easiest way to tell what version you're working on is how many process chips you have over here. This one has 2, so it's a version 1, and that'll be the easiest way to tell. The other way too is in the version 2, this chip here will be gone, and this one will be one big one. So anyway, I'm going to show you how we're going to pin out the D-pad and get that ready to put back onto the board. You want to look for capacitor 25, capacitor 26, capacitor 27 and capacitor 24 on your board. It'll be close to the 2 chips here. We're going to take a wire off this side of C25 and the left hand side of C24, C26 and C27. These will be our directional buttons, so we'll do that now. Right, start with this one. Right, we'll bring some Kynar out to those 4. This is the down direction. This is the left direction. C27 is the right direction. C24 is the up direction. Okay, that's all 4. Now it is important that you solder to the right side of these capacitors. So this one's on the far right and these other ones are on the far left. Okay, so over to the other side, and we're going to take care of the start button, the A and the B button. Okay, so we need to solder onto the right hand side of C30. Now C30 is located, pretty hard to focus, but just here, the right side of that brown one. Okay, so I'll put a dot on that, that's our start button. That's the start button. Next you want to locate C29, capacitor 29, which is on the very edge next to your label plate here. And we want to go onto the right hand side of it. And that will be our BC on the controller or our B button for the master system. Next is C28. C28 is located right here, capacitor 28. And we're going to tap into the bottom side of it facing towards these two chips. I'll put a solder dot here, and this is going to be our A button. Alright, let's mount these all back to the board and give it a test. We'll start by soldering down the directional ones, so we'll start with the down. Next the left. The right. And the up. Next you want to take your wire from C28 and put it into the one that says B. Take the one from C29 and put it into the one that says C. That will be the C on the Genesis controller, so you're playing from the left, from the right hand side, sorry. Last is the start button, so take the one from S, which is start, from C30, and solder that one in place. Alright, that's all done. So let's just give it a bit of a test. Okay, so we have the Tim Worthington Game Gear TV board. This allows us to have output to a TV for RGB composite and S video. Here's our little mounting plate for the mini DIN plug. Not 100% mandatory, but makes it a lot easier. But anyway, we're going to look at soldering in all these pads first. This is our input side here and our output side here. So we'll start tinning these all up and get straight into it.
Do you like games?
Yeah, I like games.
How about state of the art?
Hell yeah!
Then check this out!
Alright.
Hey, this is Andy from Beyond Sega. You want the real, authentic arcade experience at home? Nothing does it quite like Sega. With state-of-the-art specs like 64 kilobytes of RAM, CPU 16-bit, Motorola 68000 running at 7.61 MHz, and countless other top-end specs, and the included Streets of Rage Calyx Edition. Sega, this is why Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Now we'll do the first 4 Ds, D0, D1, D2 and D3. We'll solder our first one to So you want to have it all set up in place like I've got it here, with the inputs going out this way and the outputs going out this way. Your power cables can actually go facing this way because they'll most probably route out in this direction. Bit of hot melt glue gun and just seat it on top of this like this, and it should stay in place nice and easy. Right, so let's get straight into soldering it up. We'll do the input side first. Okay, so D0 is going to come right off the one here that says R5 on this particular point here. So I'll dab a solder onto that, and then we'll bring D0 wire over to there. Okay, D1 is the next one we're going to solder to, and that is located here. So we'll solder a point onto this point here for D1. Okay, next is D2, and D2 goes here on R57 on this side right here. So I'm going to put another dot of solder just here. Okay, D3 goes right next to where the D1 is, right up here. So I'll put a dot on there and we'll solder the last D wire on now. Okay, so now we've got to do the H-sync, and that's the 5th pin in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 small ones and the one big one on the side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's where you'll solder your H-sync to. I'm going to do that now. Okay, so moving on up a bit from those chips, you'll see what looks like a little silver canister. It's a quartz crystal pixel clock, and we're going to have to take PC from the board to here, the pixel clock, and we're going to go onto this resistor here, on this side of it here. So I'll do another drop of solder on there and we'll fit it off. The angle was a bit too tight to show it soldering, but here it is here. Put a little dot on top to get it around so I can get my iron in there. The final one, the C-sync of the signal inputs, is probably the easiest, and on a big terminal, by big I mean small, but bigger than anything else here, is this pad right here, T2. So I'll put a dot of solder on that and we will sync it up. Okay, so we need to take off the unregulated supply off this side of this resistor on R50. So I'll take that across now, put a solder dot on there, and we'll do that one. Next, I'm bringing my 5-volt supply to C51. Now the reason I'm doing this and not onto the capacitor is because there was a broken bridge across here where I've done the cap replacements, and I've had to do a bodge wire because the pad had peeled off. So I'll bring it to the next closest spot, and that's C51 for this one. But what you normally would like to do is bring it into C85 capacitor on that leg. Right here, that's the positive and that's the ground. So we're going to bring our ground to this one next because the pad's still good. Okay, solder the ground onto here. Okay, so now we go to our mini DIN plug, and we're going to solder it all in place so that we've got a board for our terminals to connect to, our RGB, a video, a 5 volts and our ground, and we'll solder all these pins in, mount it inside and do our wiring off this. Start with the grounds, put a solid ground on, there we go. Now that you've soldered those grounds, you'll find the trickier ones will be a lot easier to do now because it won't move on you. So just come in like that and just solder on these pins. Now they've all soldered in place, we'll cut a hole, set it in situ, cut our wires and then solder it up and it's basically finished then. And just pull a 5 volt from somewhere. Okay, last thing we've got to do is now put the video enable on and it's all finished. Okay, so that's the video and that's the ground. So these two I'll solder onto now. Okay, so that's ready to put back together as a plug and we'll test it out. Okay, let's check everything's gone back together normal and the audio works. Sweet, the camera's making the colours look weird, but all good.
And then he wraps it all up into a nice box to be shipped to a land far, far away.